Hello Year 9, my name of course is Mr. Boff, and in this video we are going to walk our way through the week 13 mid-year assessment preparation task, the task focused specifically on an inspector calls. So we're going to look at the question that's in your exam preparation booklet. We're going to deconstruct it, determine exactly what is the question demanding of us as students. We're going to begin the process of gathering our ideas together, and obviously that's going to help us with planning. And then also, crucially, how do we respond analytically to this responsibility task? So that's what the video is going to cover. And the idea is you'll watch this video as you sat down at home with your exam preparation booklet. You'll have this video playing in the background, and you'll use it to help you be really successful. It should also mean that maybe if you sat there thinking, oh, I'm not sure how to start, or what's this really asking of me, all those sorts of questions that we can have when we're on our own at home, this video is designed to support you and help deal with and hopefully answer those questions. So, first thing, why does any of this matter? Well, the task you are given in week 13 in the exam preparation booklet, the How Does Priestley Explore Responsibility in an Inspector Calls, it is demanding of you the same skills you will need to employ and use in your mid-year assessment. It's very, very, very close to what you are going to be asked to produce and respond to in your mid-year assessment. So practicing in this way is going to make the process of answering the mid-year assessment task so much easier, so much clearer, so much more straightforward for you from your perspective. So the structure of the presentation today in this video is as follows. We're going to be analysing Priestley's message about social responsibility. And in fact, we're going to really pin down what do we mean by responsibility within the context of an inspector calls. We're going to also connect ideas across the play, a high-level skill and one looking ahead to year 10 and your GCSE exams, one that we want to become increasingly comfortable displaying in our own analytical writing. Clearly, we need to select and also analyse quotations effectively, and I put together a number of sentence scaffolds to support that, and then also write clearly and academically. That is, demonstrating that we understand the demands in the sort of language that we use in an exam scenario. So academic, formal, precise, and so on. So this task in the exam preparation booklet is the polar opposite of busy work. It is designed to help you in your mid-year assessment, and it also looks ahead to the kind of responses you'll need to be producing in year 10 in your English literature GCSEs. Okay, so why do we structure our exam preparation work in this way? Well, what we want is it's called distributed practice. So let's think about the opposite of distributed practice. The opposite is cramming, where the night before it gets to about 7:30, 8 o'clock, you feel incredibly stressed and you think, okay, oh my goodness, I've got my exam tomorrow, I've got my mid-year assessment tomorrow, I've not done any revision or preparation, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cram as much preparation into the next 2 hours, okay? The problem is that our brains don't really work like that, and the chances are that when you wake up in the morning after you've slept, you will have forgotten everything that you tried to cram into your brain the previous evening. The way our brains work is we need a period of time, a good period of time, we're talking a good number of weeks in actual fact, where we revisit content, we allow ourselves to forget, we revisit that content and remind ourselves again, we allow some time to forget, and we are constantly going back to, over that extended period, so the opposite of cramming, go back to the material, the content, the skills, the knowledge that we need to be really successful. And so the structure of the exam preparation booklets and the various activities that you've been doing is designed to produce that sort of process, that distributed practice over an extended period where we are revisiting content around, obviously, an inspector calls. Next week, we'll be looking ahead to descriptive writing, as well as all of the knowledge that we need to demonstrate that we've learned since September in year 9 as well. So as it says there, think of each task that we're doing in the exam preparation booklet, and particularly this task, as adding another layer of knowledge and really reinforcing our ability to recall these facts, these pieces of knowledge, and obviously demonstrate that through our skills in the exam. But specifically today, the focus is on that crucial theme in an inspector calls, which is responsibility. So the question is as follows: how does Priestley, J.B. Priestley, the playwright, the author of An Inspector Calls, how does he explore responsibility, the concept, the idea of responsibility in An Inspector Calls? So if we break that down using three very simple questions: what, how, and why. So what? Well, what are the ideas about responsibility in the play? And I'll lay out some of those in the next slide. Okay, the next question is crucial. How does he do it? Okay, the play is built. There's hence the children's building blocks on the right hand side. The play is built out of words, and it's built out of specific decisions that J.B. Priestley has made as playwright. The play is the way it is because of a whole series of decisions that J.B. Priestley, the author, the playwright of An Inspector Calls, has made. So we, as literary critics, as analysts of the text, have to be particularly aware and sensitive to what those choices are and how they impact meaning and the way we understand and interpret the play. So we're thinking about things like staging, thinking about the lighting, the shift from pink and intimate to harder and brighter lighting. We're thinking about the entrances and exits of the various characters as they enter the stage, as they leave the stage, and why that might be particularly important at one moment of the play. The structure, we know this is a well-made play. The structure of the play is very, very controlled, very, very careful, very, very intentional. And the sequencing of the various interrogations that take place is itself structurally significant. Clearly, language, the words being used, I mean, that really is the most important aspect that we need to be analysing and unpicking. And then finally, related to language choices is how do the various characters come across? Remember, they're not real human beings. There is no Arthur Birling, there is no Inspector, there is no Sybil or Gerald, and so on. These characters are products of a whole series of language choices. And so, again, as literary critics, as analysts of the play, which is what we're doing, we need to be alive to why this particular word. Why is this word used by Arthur Birling or the Inspector, for example? Why is this word so important? Why is it so meaningful? And then, why? What is Priestley's message as a social commentator? Why is he doing this? Okay, what is he seeking to convey? Why is he writing the play? Now, this play has a really clear didactic purpose, a teaching purpose. It's trying to teach us something about socialism. It's teaching us something about capitalism and society, particularly society in 1912, but also getting us to think about, very deeply, I would argue, our society in 1945-46 when the play is first performed, and the play is still being performed in theatres around the world today, so the play must still have something to say about our current condition, about the world in 2025, and I think indeed it still does have a lot to say. So our response must deal with the what ideas, okay, what are the ideas specifically about the focus of the question, which is responsibility. How does Priestley use language and structure and sequencing and so on, staging? How does he convey these ideas? And then why is he doing this? Okay, what is the author's or the playwright's message? Okay, so responsibility. What is responsibility in An Inspector Calls? So, firstly, it is about accepting the moral consequences for your actions. That your actions in society towards other human beings have the potential, at least, for moral consequences. And indeed, you are morally responsible for the consequences of your actions. So if you choose to sack Eva Smith, you are responsible morally, at least within the world of the play, and according to J.B. Priestley, then, you are morally responsible to quite a strong degree for what then happens to Eva Smith. But it's also responsibility towards one another. And there's this idea that from the famous poem that no man is an island. Okay, no human being is an island. We're not these little atomized islands disconnected from everyone else. And in actual fact, we are deeply interconnected with other human beings. Just think about the clothes that you're wearing, the house that you live in, how you got to and from school. That has involved the labor, the work. Just because it's invisible to you doesn't mean it doesn't exist. That's involved the work, the labor, the time, the effort of other human beings. Human beings you'll probably never meet, you won't know their names, you'll never come into contact with them. And yet we rely upon them. Okay, we've relied upon their labor, their work, the people who manufactured your clothing, the people, the builders, the architects responsible for your house, all of that work, all of that labor, you are reliant upon. You've not built your own home, you've not grown your own food, you've not grown cotton in your back garden and woven it into cloth. So there is a recognition then, a socialist recognition in the play, that we have a moral duty towards others in society. We aren't these isolated little islands disconnected from other human beings. We are deeply connected, whether we like it or not, as human beings. We're deeply connected to others. And then linked to that, we need to understand that our individual choices, which might be based on selfish self-interest, our individual choices, how we treat our workers, in the case of Mr. Birling, affects the community, as symbolized in this case in the play by Eva Smith. And then more broadly, conceptually, we've got Priestley's criticism of capitalist selfishness, that Arthur Birling and all of the Birlings to a greater or lesser extent, but particularly Arthur Birling, particularly Sybil, and also I would include Gerald in this, have a especially capitalist, selfish, individualistic outlook. And certainly Birling sees it as his duty, and that's the word that he uses, to make profit. He sees that as his only duty, to make money, to make profit. For whom? For himself, for his family. Okay? Not for his workers, not for his striking workers, the ringleaders of the strike he sacks, and of course that includes Eva Smith. And then finally, responsibility also can be divided in terms of generations. The older characters in the play, and I'm thinking particularly, as I mentioned, of Arthur Birling and Sybil, the older characters in the play are the ones who are most, we might use a word like ossified in their attitudes and views. They are the most rigid, unwilling to be persuaded, least likely to change. Okay, whereas the younger characters, thinking obviously of Eric and Sheila specifically, I'm not going to include Gerald in that because Gerald seemingly sides more with the older characters in the play. But I'm thinking of Sheila and I'm thinking of Eric, notwithstanding the abhorrent treatment that they mete out to Eva Smith, notwithstanding that treatment, they do still seem to, by the end of the play, have learned something and recognized that they are responsible for their actions, that they do bear some responsibility for what happened to Eva Smith. So responsibility can be kind of split almost by age or generation. The older characters less likely to accept moral responsibility for their actions, and the younger characters, specifically Eric and Sheila, are more willing, and we might see a note of hope and optimism in this, are more willing to accept responsibility for what they've done. Okay, so let's say I'm doing this homework, I'm in the exam, and this is a question presented to me. So I read the question, I deconstruct the question, what's it asking of me? I've thought deeply about responsibility. So responsibility, I understand what that means. I understand what the word responsibility means within the world of the play. Okay, what am I doing next? Well, I'm thinking about, and I'm going to jot down, moments where characters either accept or indeed reject responsibility. So I'm thinking of Sybil, I'm thinking of Arthur Birling, basically rejecting or not accepting their responsibility for what has happened to Eva Smith. But I'm also thinking about Eric, I'm thinking about Sheila, I'm thinking about Gerald, I'm thinking about the way in which they accept responsibility. I would say Gerald is perhaps out there on his own. We need to think about and treat Gerald separately. But I'm thinking about all of that. I'm also thinking about the inspector's message, particularly the final message, the very famous final monologue. Okay, be taught the lesson in fire and blood and anguish and all of that. I'm thinking about the play's ending and the sense that responsibility is unresolved. So it seems like the inspector, Inspector Gull, is he an apparition? Is he real? What's going on with him? And then we get the actual phone call at the end informing them that someone has died. What exactly has been going on? Are they going to respond differently to the kind of reality that someone has passed away, committed suicide, and so on? And then those key structural choices, the final phone call, as I've just mentioned, but the lighting changes that we discussed in class at the very beginning of the play, entrances and exits, the stage directions, especially around the actor who is to portray the inspector. And then we've got two core quotations. So I'm going to give you two quotations to write about. In the real exam, in the real mid-year assessment, you're going to be given an extract, a bit of the play to write about, but you will also need to reference other moments outside of the play. What I'm doing today is I'm going to give you the quotations because it's not fair for year 9 to just be plucking quotations from an inspector calls from your memory. That would be unfair. So I'm going to give you the quotations, and these are the two. So the first one is Arthur Birling, classic Arthur Birling. If we were all responsible for everything that happened to everybody we'd had anything to do with, it would be very awkward, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. Okay, as we shall discuss. Number two, this is the inspector. I love this quotation. Public men, Mr. Birling, have responsibilities as well as privileges. Okay, great line. Famous line from the play. So, this step of gathering knowledge before writing means that we resist. I mean, I would say it really prevents retelling because it's so easy in the exam to just think, right, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to retell the story of an inspector calls. Okay, so the family are having a no, that's not what we're doing. We need to analyze. Think about the how that I mentioned on the previous slide. How is Priestley conveying his meaning? Well, we've got to analyze, we've got to unpick. Think about the word analysis. That final part of the word analysis is lysis. Now, that literally means to pick or pull apart. Okay? So we're picking and pulling apart and thinking deeply about the individual word choices, structural, sequencing choices, the lighting choices, what have you, the entrances and exits. All of these choices that Priestley is making, we're unpicking the meaning of those. Okay, that's what analysis is, and that's what we need to be doing. Okay, quotation one. So I'm going to give you some annotation prompts. The way this would work is I'm going to quickly talk it through. I'll pause. You can then, not in your exam preparation booklet because you won't have room, but just do this in your jotter or on a piece of scrap paper. So we've got the quotation and we've got some annotation prompts. So I'll read the quotation out. If we were all responsible for everything that happened to everybody we'd had anything to do with, it would be very awkward, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. Okay, it's certainly awkward for Mr. Birling. So, few prompts. Think about that phrase. What does that phrase, if we were all responsible, what does it reveal about his worldview, how he understands the world, his place in the world? If you want to use that word that we've talked about a lot in our lessons and also covered as one of our keywords in the exam preparation booklet, this really is very revealing of Birling's ideological outlook, how he sees and makes sense and understands the world and his place within it. Okay, that phrase, very awkward. How does it trivialize or suggest that suffering is somehow not important? Very awkward. Remember, Eva Smith has committed suicide. This is really serious, and he refers to that as, in a sense, very awkward. Well, what's that conveying about Mr. Birling? What does this quotation show about his refusal to acknowledge cause and effect? That chain of consequence and chain of effects, chain of events that the inspector is thinking about. And then finally, how might Priestley expect an audience to react to this casual, trivializing dismissal? Well, if we were responsible for everything that happened to everybody, we'd had anything to do with it. It would be very awkward, wouldn't it? Okay, that's rather casual. We're talking about Eva Smith has committed suicide, okay, by drinking disinfectant. We're not in the realm of awkwardness. What's that showing us about Mr. Birling? Okay, so quick set of annotations, and then on the next slide, I'm going to show you. Here are some things to consider. Okay, so worldview. His worldview or his ideological outlook, we could say, has been revealed. If we were all responsible for everything, it shows Birling's belief in that strict capitalist individualism. He rejects any idea of shared responsibility, that we have any kind of obligation to other human beings. He also trivializes suffering. He reduces the very real consequences, human consequences of his actions, the suicide of Eva Smith, to, oh, it's awkward, as if it's some kind of like minor irritation or inconvenience. That is callous. Okay, by that we mean kind of cruel and emotionally hardened, unfeeling. Okay, callousness. That's exactly the key word there to describe Mr. Birling. He refuses to accept cause and effect, that chain of events, as I mentioned, that the inspector is emphasizing. He even uses that quotation, that phrase, chain of events. He doesn't want to see, he doesn't want to pay attention to, he doesn't want to accept that his choices have harmed others. So Priestley wants us to be shocked. Shocked by the way he kind of Birling casually dismisses what's gone on with Eva Smith. And that tells us all we need to know about Birling. He's selfish, he's morally blind, he's got that kind of blinkered, myopic view of the world. And this is forming part of Priestley's broader and wider social critique of Britain and critique of capitalism as an economic and social system more generally. Okay, second quotation. Now, it says optional. This is optional. That's the main key quotation I've given you before that you will write about. This one is if you want to go one stage further. So we've got the quotation, public men, Mr. Birling, have responsibilities as well as privileges. Annotation prompts are on the screen. What does that phrase public men imply about Birling and Birling's social power, his social position? How does that contrast? You can feel the kind of balance of the sentence, responsibilities, privileges. Okay, how does that emphasize Priestley's message? Why is the inspector saying public men, Mr. Birling? That's interesting. What's that doing? Why is that important? And then overall, crucially, how does this reflect Priestley's socialist viewpoint or outlook? Okay, here's some ideas. So one, puncturing pomposity. He's really kind of puffed up, prideful, arrogant, deeply complacent, remarkably wrong-headed, almost kind of, well, laughably incorrect about lots and lots of things. Okay, unsinkable, absolutely unsinkable when he's talking about the Titanic, for example. The correction, public men, Mr. Priestley, it cuts right through that self-importance. It undermines Birling's attempt to appear authoritative, untouchable, as if he is this almost like oracle, able to make these comments about the future and about society that are so kind of wise and thoughtful. And actually, the man is an idiot. Okay, that's exactly what Priestley wants us to view him as. There's also a little bit of mockery. I really enjoy this. That class insecurity that Arthur Birling is experiencing, that we see, that public men comment mocks Birling's desperation to appear respectable. Remember, Birling is newly rich, or to use the technical term, nouveau riche. And he's there sort of anxious about his class position. He wants to be seen as part of the elite. He wants to have that almost kind of aristocratic stamp of approval. He wants to be knighted, which is important, which links to the next one. That reminder about his responsibilities targets very cleverly and really precisely the weakness of Birling, or one of the many weaknesses, that moral failure could damage his chances of being knighted and therefore publicly respected. He's really upset at the idea by the end of the play that all of this embarrassing material about Eva Smith is going to kind of come out publicly in the press and therefore jeopardize his chances of becoming knighted. And then finally, we've got that contrast, responsibilities, privileges. Mr. Birling has done really well financially out of the status quo, things as they are, the capitalist state of affairs in England in 1912. Okay, he's acquired and accumulated, hoarded extraordinary wealth. What he's not paying attention to is his responsibility. So he's accepting all the privileges, but none of the moral and social responsibility to those poor souls working in the factory, the ones actually producing the wealth and the profit, I might add. He's he's not accepting his responsibility towards those human beings. Okay, he is in some ways parasitically feeding off their hard work, and the inspector in this moment is reminding Arthur Birling that true moral status, requires duty and a recognition of one's obligations to other human beings. It's not just about wealth or social position. Okay, so let me, if only you could do this in real life, let me just shrink the size of my head. So I'm going to pause this. You've got a series of sentence scaffolds on this slide, okay, or on this part of the video. These are the non-negotiables, okay? So these are designed pretty much for everybody, and these are designed to help you produce that really academic, precise response, okay? Use them. If your teacher gives you different ones, obviously go with what your teacher is saying. But these are kind of broadly speaking what everyone will be using, and this is the minimum. So you've got that space, that line space in your booklet. Here are the sentence scaffolds. Okay, so once you've worked your way through, by the end of this, you will have a really high end. In fact, it would do very well at GCSE if you replicated it across an entire essay. You'll have a really high end piece of analytical writing. I've given you the quotation. Notice how we zoom in. Notice how by the end we're thinking about Priestley's message. That's always the direction. Once we've gone to the micro detail, the zooming in, we then move back out to the broader message and the kind of key ideas and concepts. So these are the sentence scaffolds for your first paragraph. And if you want to go above and beyond to the next, okay, you can do this optionally. You can do this in your jotters. Here it is. A second paragraph. This deals with the public men, Mr. Birling, have responsibilities as well as privileges. So we've got two sets of sentence scaffolds. The ones on the screen now, non-negotiable. This is what you need to be producing. And then these are the optional ones if you want to push yourself, practice, because obviously the ultimate beneficiary of that will be you in the exam, in the mid-year assessment, where you're going to feel a lot more confident and you'll know exactly what's demanded of you. Okay, so quite a long video, but I want to give you lots of help and scaffolded support and guidance and discussion around what I'm thinking about and how to approach this. So best of luck with your homework. Your teachers will go through this and discuss it with you and perhaps take some of them in and put them under the visualizer, do some live marking, those sorts of things. But this sort of practice, this distributed practice, is going to pay dividends. It's going to make you feel so much more confident when you're in that mid-year assessment, so you can really, really give the best demonstration of what you've learned and where you are currently at in that English learning. All right, so thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been useful, and I will see you for the next video for week 14.